Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've gathered quite a bit of material news reports, briefings on a really disturbing event that took place recently in Boulder, Colorado.
That's right. And our goal here, as always, is to try and cut through some of the noise. We'll look at what these sources actually tell us about the attack. What happened, who was allegedly involved, the motivations reported.
And really help you get a clear picture quickly
Yeah,
of the key facts and the context around it all.
exactly. Without getting overwhelmed by everything out there.
Okay, let's dive right in then. The sources we have detail an attack that occurred on June 1st, 2025.
Yeah.
This is around, what, 1:26 p.m. Mountain Time?
Yeah, 1:26 p.m. MDT, specifically on the Pearl Street Mall in Boulder, a very public place.
Right. And the target, it wasn't random, according to these reports.
No, definitely not. The reports identify the group as participants in a Run for Their Lives walk, and this was apparently a weekly thing.
Yes, the sources say it had been happening weekly for over a year. It was specifically organized to support Israeli hostages being held in Gaza.
So a known event, a regular gathering.
Exactly. And the attack itself.
Yeah.
Well, based on witness accounts and the reporting, it sounds just horrific. A man allegedly used Molotov cocktails and something described as a makeshift flamethrower.
It's hard to even picture that. Sources mention witnesses seeing an explosion, people actually catching fire.
And almost immediately, other participants were, jumping in, trying to put out the flames on people who were hit. Just chaos.
It really highlights sort of the brutality of it, but also the quick response from people right there on the scene.
Absolutely. The sources report at least 12 people were injured, some with severe burns needing hospital treatment.
And the ages mentioned, quite a range, from 52 up to 88 years old.
An 88-year-old. The material even points to a couple of specific victims, that 88-year-old who's reportedly a Holocaust refugee.
Wow.
And also a professor at the University of Colorado. It really drives home that these were individuals just participating in a walk.
Yeah. Maybe we should shift gears slightly. The sources also give us quite a bit of detail on the accused attacker.
Right. Mohammed Sabri Soliman. There was a note about spelling variations in the sources, but that's the name primarily used. What does the reporting tell us about him?
Okay, so he's identified as 45 years old. Reports say he was born and raised in Egypt, lived in Kuwait for about 17 years, and then most recently was residing in Colorado Springs.
And his record. Anything prior.
That's what's striking, according to the sources. Apparently, he wasn't previously known to law enforcement. He was also injured during the attack himself, we should note, and hospitalized.
Okay. And then there's the question of his immigration status, which seemed to come up quite a bit in the reactions reported later. What did the sources state there?
Right. The material says he entered the U.S. back in August 2022. It was on a B1, B2 visa, the kind typically for tourists or short business trips.
Okay.
That visa expired in February 2023. Now, he did apply for asylum in September 2022, so shortly after arriving, and that application was still pending. He was granted work authorization in March 2023, and this is key for some of the later commentary, that authorization expired on March 28, 2025. So just a couple of months before the attack.
So at the time of the attack, the sources describe him as living in the U.S. illegally.
That's how it's characterized in the reporting, yes. Based on the expired visa and the expired work permit.
And as you mentioned, that specific detail became, a focal point in some of the political commentary surrounding the event.
Absolutely. It was seized upon in several of the reactions we'll touch on.
Okay, so we have the incident, the alleged attacker's background. Let's really dig into what the sources are revealing about his motive and the planning involved. Because this is where, based on his reported statements to investigators and court documents, things get really intense.
Yeah, this part is crucial for understanding the why behind it, at least as reported. The material seems quite clear. He specifically targeted this group. And his stated reason, he called them Zionists.
The quotes attributed to him about his motivation are, they're chilling. He allegedly told investigators he hated the Zionist group. He said he felt he needed to stop them from taking over our land, and explicitly stated he meant Palestine.
And it didn't stop there, did it?
No. The reporting includes quotes like he wanted them all to die, that he had no regrets, and even that he would go back and do it again. That level of expressed hatred is deeply disturbing.
It really is. And the sources strongly suggest this wasn't some, spur-of-the-moment thing. He allegedly planned this attack for a year.
A whole year.
Wow.
And the timing. Apparently, he waited until after his daughter's graduation to actually carry it out.
Which suggests a certain level of premeditation and control over the timing. The preparation itself, according to the sources, involved research. He allegedly looked up how to make Molotov cocktails on YouTube.
Right, and collected the ingredients over time. But here's a really interesting, almost contradictory detail from the sources about the planning versus the execution.
What's that?
He reportedly had 18 of these incendiary devices ready to go. 18. Plus that backpack sprayer filled with gasoline. His original stated plan, according to the documents, was to kill everyone there.
18. Okay, but he didn't use all of them.
No, he only threw 2. And the reason he allegedly gave police, he got scared and had never hurt anyone before.
So all that planning, that stated intent, and then hesitation in the moment. That's quite a psychological detail, if accurate.
It is. And the plan also reportedly included him dying in the attack. He allegedly sprayed the gasoline on himself, not intending it for the victims, but as part of a plan to die there.
And there was another layer to the planning, too, wasn't there? About firearms.
Yes, that's right. He apparently told police he'd taken a concealed handgun course. His initial plan was actually to shoot the victims,
but
he was denied when he tried to buy a gun. The reason given in the reports is because he isn't a legal citizen. So it seems when that avenue was blocked, he shifted to the homemade incendiary devices.
That suggests a real determination to carry out an attack, even if the method had to change. The planning even included a disguise.
Yeah, the sources report he dressed as a gardener, wore an orange vest, presumably to blend in, get closer without raising alarm.
And he left things behind? Messages?
Apparently so. An iPhone and a journal with messages for his family. It seems he fully expected not to survive the attack.
So putting it all together, the sources paint this picture of really long-term, detailed planning, rooted in a very specific, hateful ideology, exploring different methods. It's quite extensive.
Okay, let's turn to the aftermath then. The investigation, the charges, and the reactions, again, all based on the source material we reviewed. He was caught pretty quickly, right?
Yes. Witnesses reported police apprehending him shortly after the attack, and authorities recovered a lot of evidence on the scene and in his car.
Huh.
Well, beyond the 2 devices he threw, they found the other 16 unlit Molotov cocktails, plus gasoline, rags, that backpack sprayer, also papers in his car that mentioned Israel, Palestine, and USA, and of course the iPhone and journal he'd mentioned leaving.
So quite a bit for investigators to work with. What's the status of the investigation now?
The FBI is involved, and they're reportedly investigating it as a targeted terror attack, also as an act of ideologically motivated violence. The current belief, according to officials cited, is that he acted alone.
But the investigation is ongoing.
Yes. They're still looking into the full extent of the plot, potential contacts, that sort of thing. Standard procedure in a case like this.
And the charges he's facing sound incredibly serious.
They are. He's facing federal hate crime charges. And then on the state level, there are multiple counts, including 8 counts of criminal attempt to commit first-degree murder.
8 counts.
Yeah, under 2 theories. Extreme indifference and after deliberation. Plus, first-degree assault charges, some specific to at-risk victims due to age, and possessing incendiary devices. And the sources note more charges could still be filed.
This bail reflects that severity, right? $10 million, cash only.
$10 million, cash only, yes. Unsurprisingly, this event prompted a lot of reaction, as reported in the sources, from public officials, various organizations.
Let's touch on some of those. For instance, Colorado Governor Jared Polis is quoted calling it an act of terror.
Right, and Colorado's Attorney General, Phil Weiser, made an interesting point. He noted that state law allows for enhanced punishment if a crime is committed with animus, bias motivation, but Colorado doesn't actually have a specific criminal terrorism statute on the books.
The acting U.S. Attorney, J. Bishop Gruwell, also weighed in, reportedly highlighting the severity of the attack and, again, Sullivan's reported lack of any regret.
And then we get to the reactions that linked it specifically to immigration policy, which we hinted at earlier.
Yes. The sources report that former President, now President Donald Trump, posted on Truth Social. He stated that under his administration, Solomon would be deported in addition to being arrested. He directly linked the attack to border security and blamed, quote, Biden's open border policy.
And similarly, Stephen Miller, White House Deputy Chief of Staff, is quoted highlighting Solomon's expired visa and the fact his work permit was granted during the Biden administration. Miller reportedly said, quote, suicidal migration must fully be reversed.
So it's important for you listening to understand we're reporting what the sources captured, these are specific political reactions that became part of the narrative around this event.
Exactly. We're just relaying how the incident was discussed and framed in the materials we reviewed.
Beyond the purely political, other groups commented too.
Yes. The Soufan Center, an intelligence analysis group, their intel brief is mentioned. They apparently noted this attack fits a pattern they're seeing. Extremist actors exploiting the conflict in Gaza, using global events to justify domestic attacks. Sort of a feedback loop. They also situated it within a period of heightened tensions around how pro-Palestinian demonstrations were being characterized and pointed to other recent violent incidents.
And the Council of American Islamic Relations, CARIR.
They issued a statement condemning the attack. They emphasized that the perpetrators' alleged actions absolutely do not represent people who are peacefully advocating for Palestinians.
And the sources themselves kind of provide broader context, right? Mentioning other recent violent events in the U.S.
They do. They place this Boulder attack alongside things like the 2025 arson at the Pennsylvania governor's residence and the killing of Israeli embassy workers in D.C. earlier that year, noting generally a rise in anti-Semitic incidents being reported.
So it paints a picture. While this might be one individual, it's happening against a backdrop of other concerning violence.
Precisely. It highlights that even if someone acts alone, the incident doesn't occur in a vacuum. It taps into these larger, troubling trends of ideologically driven violence, sometimes amplified by conflicts happening elsewhere in the world.
Okay, so stepping back, let's connect this back to you, our listener. Why have we spent this time digging into these specific sources? Why does understanding the details of this particular incident matter?
Well, I think this event really touches on so many complex, interconnected issues, doesn't it? You've got international conflict seemingly echoing in a local community. You have the dynamics of domestic extremism, targeted violence.
Right. And by looking closely at the reported facts, the who, what, where, when, and importantly, the alleged why based on his own reported statements and planning, you get a much more maybe granular understanding of how these challenging things can actually play out.
It really underscores how an individual, even someone apparently not on law enforcement's radar before, can seemingly become radicalized and plan very serious, sophisticated acts of violence.
So being informed by these specific details from the sources, hopefully, helps you make better sense of these difficult, often quite unsettling trends we're seeing.
Exactly. It provides a concrete case study, if you will, based purely on the reporting available of the preparation, the stated intent, and the context surrounding such an attack.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, here's a final thought we want to leave you with, based only on the information presented in these sources we've discussed.
Okay.
Given the attacker's stated motivations rooted in that specific hateful ideology, his detailed year-long planning process, which reportedly included researching weapons online, trying and failing to buy a gun, then switching to homemade devices, and the fact that he had prepared, reportedly, 18 of these devices, but only managed to throw 2 because he allegedly got scared. What does this specific sequence of events, this combination of intense planning and apparent hesitation at the critical moment, tell us about the complex and maybe even contradictory nature of ideologically motivated violence and the various obstacles, internal or external, someone might face when trying to carry out such an act. That's a lot to reflect on, thinking about that journey from radicalization to action and maybe the friction points within that process itself.
Indeed. Something to consider. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the sources on the Boulder attack.
Stay informed, everyone!